Again, I'd just like to say good morning to everyone. This is GC in Philly, and today is May the 3rd, 2025. And truly, it's an awesome day. I mean, here in Philly, the weather's great. Hopefully, it's the same where you are. But more importantly, we have the opportunity to come together to appreciate, the journey that we on. And I believe that when we met last Monday, I think Pastor had asked if we could look at Psalms um, chapter 8 and revisit that. I think he basically gave, exegy on each particular verse, but more importantly, he wanted us to revisit it and to see if there were any thoughts or any revelations that we may have experienced, and at the same time, any thoughts that anyone would like to share. But before we do, let's put the question out. Are there any questions that anyone may have as we begin our session this morning? Are there any questions? Or
This is
comments?
Vermel. I
Yes, go
have
ahead.
a question this morning regarding Psalms 8. Um, in the second verse at the end, it said that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger. What does enemy mean in avenger in this context?
Okay, and you're reading from verse number 2, and I'm
Yes.
looking at I'm reading from the American Standard Version. So it says, "From the mouth of infants and nursing babes, thou
Mhm.
hast established strength because of thine adversaries and the enemy and the revengeful cease." And my understanding, Ramel, you know, the creator is having us to understand that through the mouths of infants and nursing babes, you know that established strength for us to be able to combat or to be able to deal with the adversaries or deal with the enemies or anything that would be not of God in reference to what the creator has for us. And so I think that in my, again, understanding, sometimes in the scriptures it says, and babes and children shall lead you. So I'm just trying to look at it in a way where if we can look at how this connects in terms of verse 1 and verse 2, we can see how majestic, you know, God's name is in all of the earth. And I think because of um that desire and vision for mankind, it had us or give me the opportunity to appreciate that how majestic is thy name, but more importantly, what the Creator has given us that we can draw from to be able to help us to have that strength in time of need when we got to deal with adversity or when we have to deal with the enemy, because again, we know that there's challenges and struggles that we grow through. But at the same time, as I had reread this and looked at verse number 2, it just gave me a reassurance to know that God's creation is awesome. And how can we draw from God's word through the mouths of infants or babes or through those that God, put in our pathway? That's how I'm looking at the adversary, that we're going to deal with those who, will try to bring confusion or chaos. But I think more importantly, because who God is and who we are, we are able to receive from the Spirit, if that resonates a little bit.
It
I don't know
might be
if
a little more clear. I think where my struggle was is we had talked earlier, last year, I think it was, where we don't really have enemies. But when we're using the word enemy here, are we referring to what you're saying, that those things are adversarial to creation, those things that we set a kind of negative intent behind? like I'm kind of thinking like religion would be an adversary. Is that what enemy and avenger means?
Absolutely. In terms
Okay.
of religion, and again, if there's anyone else who would like to expound on that, please feel free. But I look at it in that same way, uh, in terms of, your conversations, because again, with religion and all that, we have experienced through our life journey, again, in terms of enemies, we don't look at it in terms of having an enemy, as you mentioned, but at the same time, we have to still be aware and pay attention, to the signs of the time. We got to pay attention to worldviews. We have to be conscientious about, like you say, religion in terms of how things are put out there, whether it's from Catholicism or any other, type of religion that we know that is man-made.
Or things we personally struggle with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I
Thank you.
can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, good morning. This is Audrey. Um, the way I think about it is when it says thou whose glory above the heaven is chanted by the mouth of babes and infants. I think about that in terms of how how little kids, when they especially little kids, 3, 4 years old, when they make a discovery about life or about something in their environment, they're just totally in awe of it. And once they discover that thing, it kind of becomes like their superpower, because they want to do it or say it or whatever over and over and over and over again. So I think it's telling us that when we discover that the enemy and the avenger is just our mindset, it's our thoughts. When we discover that we are beyond that, we are more than that, we are Elohim, that becomes our superpower. And when we realize that superpower, then yeah, nothing can hurt us.
Audrey,
Nothing.
that is really a good explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And absolutely, Audrey, and I appreciate, you sharing that, because again, when we look at this chapter, and before I move on, let me just ask, are there any other questions that anyone have before we go back and look at Psalms number 8, verses 1 through 9? Are there any other questions or comments? So Ramel, was we able to answer your question or give you some clarity on that?
That gave me a whole new way to look at that. Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. And so as we look at Psalm number 8, it talks about, the Lord's glory, and man's dignity. And as, Audrey was saying, that when we know that we are Elohim, then we are in that position where we can truly appreciate that what the verses are saying to us. And when it says in chapter 1, "O Lord, our Lord," I think Pastor had reverted to it where "O Lord" speaks of the self-existent one. It speaks of, God, in that sense, where we can see the many names of God when we talk about, Elohim, or El Shaddai, or Yahweh, or the El itself, but it says, "How majestic is thy name in the earth." And that really struck me in terms of just really revisiting it again, because when we think about, you know, the second, our Lord, it talks about Adonai, it talks about the master, it talks about who we are, in a sense of now can we see the power that we have, in our name. When you think about it in terms of, the names, our birth names that we're given, but a lot of times, as some of you may know, I may put I am GRC, in terms of I am before. And for me personally, it's just wanting to have that reverence for who I am, but more importantly, when it says in verse 1, how majestic is thy name in all the earth. This is the power that that we have. You know what I mean? Where we're not just limited to a particular area, but when we talk about the universe, when we talk about the Pangea, when we talk about you know um, the cosmic consciousness, when we talk about the earth consciousness, I mean, it just gives me much more of a rejuvenation to realize how majestic and how powerful we are as Elohim. And so again, that's something that kind of really stuck out for me this week as I revisited it. But anyone else have any thoughts about maybe what their name means to them, or how do they see the majestic of God's creation and his splendor? Any thoughts, anybody? Or any comments?
Hey, George.
Yes.
This is Rania from California. So I was watching this thing on YouTube, of course, everywhere is YouTube, but it was talking about who was Yahweh before he was the Jewish God,
The creator.
and I was learning that he was part of a pantheon of gods. He wasn't just the only God.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting because you learn, oh, he's the one and only, right? And Yahweh, I think it was Yahweh, was the storm god. He was the god of thunder and lightning and war, and he was kind of a really stormy god. And then when as the religion grew, they needed an aspect of God that wasn't just righteous vengeance or whatever. So then El was part of that pantheon, and he was more the fatherly, loving God. And so they adapted the El of that. So sometimes when it's saying stuff like that, we let us make heaven, or let us make men in our own image, or some of the Psalms where it seems to refer to two different gods. It is, at least early in the Israelite faith. But what that made me think about is how we try to force fit ourselves into one thing, right? I'm Rania. That's it. As opposed to really thinking about ourselves as and we've been talking about this, as many things, right? As a as a collection of thoughts, attributes, and we're not singular. And I think what's so hard right now with everything going on is, you're either Republican or Democrat, you're a cult, or you're Trump, or it's like everyone is, we've gone back to the state of trying to be just one being, right? One, I am this, I'm not that. I'm this, I'm not that. And even the God of the Israelites was not one God, even though we think of it now because that's the way it's been taught. There's only one God. There's a God above gods. And I guess as I look at who am I, right? I'm many things, and that's okay. It doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make something wrong with me per se to feel sometimes conflicted in myself, because there are many parts of myself warring against whatever it is I'm trying to do, or what I have to do and I don't want to do. Or anyway, it's just, as you were talking about God and the name of God, it was interesting for me to bring that thought in of the God of God, King of Kings, God of gods. This idea that even in the early Jewish faith, there was still this, it's not monotheistic, I guess it's pantheistic, I can't remember the word, right? But this idea of more than one God. And that's all I have.
Yeah, no. And I appreciate, Rainey, you mentioning that, because there's times that I'm sure all of us in our time of prayer or in our time of meditations, we, may call on the name of God, and we may say Jehovah Rapha, the God, who heals. But in certain situations, I don't know about you all, but in the past, there's times that I have referred to, the name of God in different aspects, and that's what makes me appreciate who I am today, as in terms of as Elohim, because it talks about, the plural, right? When we talk about, the many gods, in that sense, in terms of we all are one yet many. So I think it definitely has some relevance in terms of us being able to appreciate when we say, "Oh Lord" or "Our Lord," because I think it means different things to us in those moments and times. And I think that's the majestic aspect of the power of our names. And as we, continue to spiritually evolve and appreciate our journey, it gives me much more comfort to know that I can go to, you know, the Creator's words, God's words, and draw strength and draw power from them, in time of need. So I think that is something as we continue to give thought to. And just last night I was looking at the stars, and we'll get to some of the other verses, but it just seemed that during the period of our conversation over the months and years, we've been spending time looking at astronomy. We've been spending time looking at the stars. You know what I mean? I think meditating more strongly, on God's creations. And we talk about how nature is our first teacher. So for some reason, I believe that this is a time that the Creator is giving us an opportunity to revisit, as Pastor asks us to look at Psalms 8, to see if there's any revelations or any experiences that we're having that would help us to appreciate, the journey that we on. Any comments or questions in reference to what Rainier had mentioned, or any thoughts about it from anyone else's perspective?
I have a question or comment regarding what you guys were talking about. When you look
Mhm.
at artists, whether those that are painting, they always, in my opinion, they think outside the box. They're not bound by these particular walls or rules. And even if you look at artists that are musicians, when you see them get together with other artists, whether they're country, R&B, or blues, they all just connect over music. It's not even about the boundaries. So my question is that the same, or is that something totally different?
I think it's the same, Mara. When you think about, you know, astronomy, for an example, when we think about the intelligences that God creates, and us, it talks about vibration, it talks about frequency, it talks about, energy. And so when you talk about artists come together, one of the first multiple intelligence that Dr. Garner have spoke about is in reference to music, and how music is an intelligence, but it's a vibration, is an energy, where again, what's the saying? Music sometimes soothes the soul, of the beast. So again, I think that it's not something that's separate. I really believe it's all one. And so music is definitely, I think a vibration that our ancestors, I think that the creator put out there. And I think last Monday we were talking about the roaring waters, I believe, and how if you ever was able to go to the ocean, and at different periods of time, you're able to experience music or experience sound. Does that resonate a little bit, Myra? Or I'm answering your question a little
It
bit?
does. It does. Thank you.
Okay. And so again, just music itself. And then I think that's as I say before, one of the intelligence, along with, seven others, where we have actually um well, it's eight intelligence, five are academic, and two are emotional, in terms of intrapersonal and intersocial skills. But music, definitely. So, that's the splendor for me, when I look at it in terms of the heaven. So I appreciate your question, Myra. Anyone else?
This is Nick. Yeah, I just wanted to add to the idea of the relationship between music, but also the names associated with the deities or the creator as they have been changed and sort of formulated over time. In the same way that every note or every instrument in music contributes to the whole, all of the different sort of names or images associated with the way we think about the energy and spirit and forces of nature that we interact with, that human beings sort of represented as deities in a lot of cases, all of those sort of contribute to the expression of the one thing. So it's kind of like the different personalities or ways in which the creator expresses itself throughout the infinite universe, but on this world, in the many different peoples and cultures, etc., each have their own sort of flavor of the overall dish. So it's kind of like that when light passes through a prism, you get all the colors of the spectrum. Each individual color could be said to be a, for lack of a better term, perhaps, a deity representing a particular aspect of the original light source, the creator. So when we have many, many different peoples represent, or sort of each in their own way, attempting to understand the creator through giving it a particular name that represents many, many, many deities, potentially, what you have is that same phenomenon. It's the way in which the energy has manifested, or the way in which that energy is colored in that particular part of the world, in that particular mindset of the people who are sort of naming or attempting to understand the creator by giving a particular aspect of it a name. And religiousness, quote unquote, is what sets in when you assume that that thing that you have named is the ultimate form, or the ultimate thing to be worshipped or sought, rather than the inner knowing that that thing is merely a representation and it is one that is part of the whole. And I think that dynamic exists everywhere. The rise of the religious way in which we think about our understanding of the creator or the universe, it is this sort of taking a piece of the whole and assuming that it is the only and correct one, instead of remembering the way in which that whole, that one thing, expresses itself in many, many, many different ways. Thank you.
So,
Nick,
Yes.
are you saying that Grand Rising? I'm just getting on. The doctor said not come, so I'm just getting on. Nick, are you saying that the whole religious thing comes when you think that, for example, that Allah is demonic and God is the creator only?
Yeah, that's a good example. Which is,
So, excuse me. Go ahead, Nick.
and yeah, and that example of Allah being demonic is particularly foolish, because the word used by Jesus himself, assuming, you know, the truth of that story, that described the creator is Allah. That's closer to the actual word. But if you say that in
Yeah.
church, you get kicked out. So
Yep.
That's Aramaic, which is where Arabic comes from. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Basically, we were, going back over looking at Psalm number 8. And as you had recommended us to kind of review, and in our discussion thus far, we just spoke about, verse number 1 in terms of really looking at it in terms of its significance in our own understanding, but more importantly, talking about, oh Lord, the self-existent one, and again, looking at our Lord as far as, the master, Adonai. But what we spoke about was how there's various names of God that we may have called on in our prayer or in our meditations. And so when we speak about, again, El Shaddai, you know what I mean, or El Rafa, there's names that we've spoken, as Nick just mentioned, in terms of Laha. We know that when we say Elohim, it's more than one, we say plural. And so that's where we were in terms of just trying to appreciate what the scriptures were saying to us in our own understanding. And again, Vermel, mentioned in reference to what did the adversary or the revengeful mean in terms of in verse number 2. And so that's where we are at this point, and we just began to get into, looking at the verse number 3. We haven't started yet, but that's where we are at this point. I just wanted to bring you up to date. I'm done. Are you there, Pastor?
I'm sorry, I was muted. I want to say something about that because I'm here for what Nick said also. The only religions or the only pseudo-spiritual belief systems that only accept one word that to be representative of the Creator is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. If Allah is the only God, that's the only word they're going to accept for Allah. God is the only word that Christianity is going to accept. Judaism will say Elohim or Jehovah, and they don't even recognize the plurality of Elohim. So the bottom line is that all the cultures, Eastern cultures, all of them recognize the linguistic understanding of the cultural understanding of the Creator, regardless of what name you apply to it. And I think that when we look at it from that perspective, we get also a clear picture of the origin of this idea of only one God counts, because the Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all of them believe the same principles, with the exception of some membership and respect for what they call the Creator. And all of this was created for the express purpose of divisions. And right now, the two most dangerous religions, especially in the Eastern world, are Christianity and Islam. I'm done.
Okay, are there any questions that anyone have at this point in reference to anything that have been said, or any thoughts? One other point I wanted to mention, Myra, I believe, mentioned about music being an important awareness or intelligence in terms of our creativity when artists or where people get together. And I know that there's been times in the past where there may be songs, or there may have been lyrics, or there may have been words, as Pastor was speaking about linguistically, in terms of words having power. But hopefully, we can, appreciate that this is not something that is happenstance in terms of it not having any significance. And so I think that, again, to be able to appreciate our history and our origin is to be able to recall how our ancestors were able to teach and to guide us through their journey in terms of how they were able to receive from the Creator. So again, I just wanted to share those thoughts because I know there's times that some of us may have mentioned certain artists or certain songs that may have tapped into, our energy in terms of having us to appreciate the journey that we're on. So let's move on. If there's no other questions or comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you hear some background noise, I'm outside. But anyway, wasn't the world created on sound?
Rhythm. Yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
And I'll tell you why. Music is universal, and like Myra said, when musicians get together, it's like they're on that one. They're in that one place, that special place, and they get so high till it's like they reach the third eye. Even what's his name? Roy Ayers made a song, "The Third Eye," and in order for him to see that, to write that song, he had to be in that special place and being in the third eye, in that oneness. So that's why I asked the question that I did. Thank you.
Anyone want to respond? Go ahead, Nick.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Evelyn. I just have to say, has anyone seen that movie, the new Ryan Coogler movie, Sinners, starring Michael B. Jordan? Good movie.
Yes.
Very violent horror movie.
Not yet.
But very good. But I bring that up because one of the main themes of that movie is how the music that Black people create transcends time and space. And it has the effect of unifying the past and the future. And that there's a lot of supernatural horror stuff in that movie as well, but it's good. But I just wanted to relate that whole idea of music, it being vibration, being rhythm, to the names of God that have sort of popped up in different places around the world, because names are themselves, as I've said before, a formula for, it's like an equation of vibration. And it is representative of how you feel a particular energy wherever you are in the world. And that, like the names of the Creator on the tree of life, or the names of the force of the being that we call Creator, as it expresses itself through the dimensional layers of reality, and the different names associated with the Creator are all that. It is that one vibration as it diversifies itself, as it sort of interacts with itself in different ways, as it produces this material experience as an expression of itself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Nick.
Thank
All
you. One of the major methods that Imhotep used for healing is music. Because in actuality and reality, everything can be set to note. Even your speech can be set to note. Music is one of the most powerful forms of communication and influence on the face of the earth. The rhythm of it speaks to that. I remember having been in Haiti. And the forms of honestly of gospel music they didn't use, they didn't embrace unless you were in a Christian church. Same thing what happened in Kenya, because it was the rhythm of it was not in the rhythm, was not congruent to the rhythm of the universe. They didn't put it in those words, but that's what they meant. And it was quite different. The feelings were quite different when you heard the music as they presented it. To hear the voices, I remember from being in Africa, to hearing the voices of the songs or the speech, very soft, but they traveled for great distances. We have to be close to each other if we're going to talk in a low voice. But I noticed, not I, but others as well, noticed that the voices carried in greater distances. And since that time, I've come to understand the reason. It's because the speech, the words vibrated with the atmosphere, and it was easier for that sound to be carried on the wings of the wind, the air around them, because they were in rhythm with everything in the universe, and that makes a huge difference. So I think that the appreciation for music, whether you play an instrument or not, or whether you can sing or not, the appreciation for music is something that most of us, if not all of us, have without really thinking about the universality of it and how it plays a major role in communications, whether you're talking or singing or playing an instrument. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Pastor. I think in our conversation, all
Hey,
of us,
George, let me ask you a question. George, let me ask you a question, please. Rainier, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm still on.
Okay, did that make sense to you? The ease with which words are carried.
That what? Sorry,
Huh?
I got someone talking. I had someone talk when
Okay.
you talked.
The ease of the way the words are carried on wind in the air, the softness
Yeah.
of it, and how far it travels, even though you're not talking in a high voice,
Yeah.
a loud voice.
Yeah, just if you're singing in your resonance, where your body naturally resonates and sings, it's a very easy feeling to sing, like breathing out on a pitch.
And it travels
carry.
further.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yeah, like soft can travel to the back of the opera house because you sing it just right in the right spot, and it like resonates the air around you and in the place. So even though it's tiny sound, it moves. The resonance is what carries, not your power. You're pushing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Sure.
what I was trying to say. I appreciate that.
I have one more comment. Oh, I'm sorry, GC. You were going to say something. I apologize.
I yield because Pastor, I think, was done, and I'll come after you. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Okay, I had asked the question a while back about what does it mean by all these young people and older people are doing boots on the ground. And I found another answer. They said that mankind is creating a rhythm with the stomping and the oneness. They say this is causing a rhythm in the earth. And I wanted to ask the family, what does that mean, causing a rhythm? I know everything has to have a rhythm to it. Music has rhythm, the earth has rhythm. So what is our purpose of doing boots on the ground? Because even people in church doing it, they dressing it up, saying it's Jesus or whatever. But anyway, they got the fans and everything. But I'm just asking a question. So what is this? Is this creating the oneness? And what's the purpose of the rhythm? That's my question.
Well, I mean, if I may, comment on that, when you talk about movement, from a kinesthetic perspective, which is another intelligence, we talk about movement to sound or movement to exercise or movement in general. And if I can, relate to this, it's like the vibration of music. And I'll put it in this aspect. I hope you have a sense that, it's like looking at harmony. When we talk about, the principles of Mayat, we talk about harmony and what does harmony mean. But when you talk about boots on the ground in terms of how I see it in the streets of North Philly, you know what I mean? It's a situation where we're walking and talking with a purpose. So when we say boots on the ground, how are we moving? How is our movement? And so when we begin to look at it from a spiritual perspective, I sense it in the same way where as we continue to engage in our spiritual journey, I see boots on the ground being one that we are in harmony in terms of looking at foundation, but more importantly, walking, in the spirit so that we don't get caught up in the flesh in terms of being separated or being in a chaotic situation, but being able to appreciate it from as so above, so below. So again, Evelyn, when I say boots on the ground, I see it in terms of how vibration, how frequency have us to be in a tune, where we can, hear that radiance or that sound that we know that is right. And so everybody has their own note. I put it that way. It is said everybody has their own note. And so there's a vibration, there's a sound that when we hear it, we know that, man, not that I don't understand it, but I can feel it in my soul. You know what I mean? There's that, kind of vibration. So I don't know if that totally answers or give you any insight on your comment, Evelyn, but that's my understanding in terms of boots on the ground. I'm done. Go ahead.
Evelyn, can you,
George, may I comment on that? Go ahead, Audrey.
I just wanted to ask Evelyn what she means by boots on the ground. Sorry, I'm out of the loop.
Oh, they're not doing it in Mexico? I'm sorry.
No.
You need to come home. Okay, but anyway, what it is, Audrey, is people are doing line dances and they have boots on. A lot of them have boots on, cowboy boots. And when I was listening to Joy, and the name of the song is I Got My Boots on the Ground. Everyone is doing it, Audrey. Go to YouTube, babe. It's everywhere. And while GC was talking, I thought about the rhythm, the question I asked about rhythm. When you see a baby like 6 or 7 months old, you put music on, they start moving. And to me, only the African got rhythm. I really see it now. Only the African got rhythm. And so I've seen on YouTube also where Caucasians try to do it and they don't have it. Nothing against that, but they don't have it. The African is the one with the rhythm. And I believe the boots on the ground, we're causing a stir, as GC said, as above, so below. We're causing a stir. We're causing the universe to vibrate. That's what I see. I'm done.
Well, the reason I asked, and I wanted to know exactly what you were talking about, because I think it harkens back to beginning, because our original means of music was the drum beat, and which resonates across miles, and it resonates deeply inside in your internal self. So I think it's kind of almost like they're hearkening back to beginning because they want to feel that resonance. They want to connect with it. Anyway, that's what I think.
Yeah,
Well, when you come home, I'm gonna teach it to you, Audrey. I'm gonna teach you
Okay.
I'm gonna teach you boots on the ground. Okay, all right, I'm done.
no, Evelyn, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think, no, go ahead. I'll speak after you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Pastor. I'm sitting here with some joy in my heart because LaVon was saying it's a line dance, and Evelyn, I didn't even really know exactly, what you were saying in terms of it actually being a dance now, because I was coming just from a spiritual perspective, when we talk about being in harmony and unity, but that's, something, I appreciate you sharing because again, that's being in oneness when we talk about how we move. And so I thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna look that up. Pastor, I'm done. Go
All right, thank you. One of my classmates from high school wants to do that in unity, boots on the ground. However, when I first heard about it, something came to me instantly, and that was boots on the ground is also a military term, a term that's used in war. You can't win a war. You can bomb all you want to, but you can't win a war without boots on the ground. And I think it's not ironic, but I think it's divine that this term has been transposed by the African especially to mean something totally different, to speak to the idea of boots on the ground being more spiritual than destructive. The rhythm of boots on the ground putting us in rhythm with each other, in rhythm with the universe, as opposed to boots on the ground have a meaning that there is destruction involved in the act of boots on the ground. I see this as a move of peace, loving kindness, harmony in the earth. There are the things like this that appear to be simple. It makes the connection to other things that are deeply spiritual and speaks to the idea of our desires to bring harmony to the earth. I'm done.
Hey, Pastor, and everybody, this is Rainey again. I thought it was interesting we talking about rhythm because on Palm Sunday this year, when we planned the service, I told the pastor about Ride on King Jesus, which we used to do kind of near that time because it was the entry of Christ right into the Jerusalem. And the accompanist that plays at church is this Jewish guy who plays jazz. But when he hears certain music, he plays them in a certain way. And I decided I couldn't have him play this song because I just knew he wouldn't get it. Like he wouldn't get, when you hear it in a Black church, even the piano or the organ sounds percussive. It's very much about the beat more so than the music. And sure enough, he said, "Oh, I can play this for you." And he starts to play something that sounds almost Dixielandish. And I'm like, no, I'm going to sing it a cappella. But what I did, and I've never done this, is I beat, there's this little box near where I stand that has the sound system in it, and I beat on the box the rhythm, and then he did it on the piano. And what was amazing to me, because I sing at this Presbyterian church, and they call them the Frozen Chosen for a reason, because they're not at all like Evelyn's thing about rhythm. There's no rhythm, there's no movement really. But by the end of this, with the rhythm that was there, people were clapping on beats, which was really cool. But they were also seemed moved by the rhythm of the song, the force of the song and the rhythm that carried it. And I wondered too how much, because we are not a part of these protests in the way that we've been in the past, that rhythm that we bring when we protest, I wonder how much of that is there. Because it does a lot to carry the message and to carry the energy. Like you're saying with the singing, the rhythm carries it too. It energizes you. That's why we play music when we clean in the house, right? And that's where I wonder how much maybe that, and not that I want to go out protesting right now or anything, but it's just interesting to see that how much that rhythm impacted the people in that church who had never heard the song before and never heard it sung to a beat, to a drum beat almost. And then just carrying you through to some of the marches that we're seeing and what Blacks, which I think we should do right now, is kind of not being there on the forefront, but how do we impact the rhythm of that? And maybe it's, as you said, it's doing stuff like boots on the ground, because Wanda Sykes was on a talk show and she made this funny comment. She says, we're not going to be marching with y'all. Nope, we're going to be sitting. We're going to have y'all back, way from the back. We're going to be dancing boots on the ground in the back while y'all are watching. And it's interesting that all that kind of combines to talk about our part in this and how we're doing the rhythm. Anyway, I got to go because the dog's barking. But okay, that's it.
What Randy is saying, this whole discussion about rhythm is bringing to the forefront that we are in the midst of what we've been looking for. The thing that we sought to apprehends us. What I mean by that is we have been talking about transformation from a brutal society that lacks empathy to a society that is made up of empathy, has empathy deep in its soul, a society that is in rhythm with the Creator. We are seeing the beginnings of this change, of this peace and harmony. We begin to see balance. When Rainey made that statement about how quickly they were clapping on beat and moving in rhythm with the music, that is significant. And the significance of that is we have been in contact with that congregation. I don't know how long, Rainey, maybe 2 or 3 years? I don't know.
Yeah, at least two, maybe more.
Yeah. And look at what's happening with it. Could it possibly be our energy that is influencing their responses? And I think it is, because we've talked about how our meetings, our discussions resonates better to white people because it's coming through them and not us. Because there's an energy force that Europeans have that we don't, in terms of the idea of energy for that projects empathy and forgiveness, etc. And I'm not talking about individual people. I'm talking about a cultural thing, a European mindset being altered by the music that Rainier has spoken about in conjunction with this idea of boots on the ground being changed to mean something different than what it has meant. The idea of people beginning to see the significance of being grounded. In other words, walking in the grass barefooted and embracing the heat and the light of the sun, as opposed to putting poisonous chemicals on your body to so-called protect you from the sun. All of these small things that appear to be small, rather, are nuances that I see as as balance and order being brought into place. And when I take that and couple it with what's happening, especially on the continent and around the world, I see that without the rhythm of the African, without the desires for peace and harmony of the African, nothing will change. And now I see a change. I see a change. To me, it looks like if you could picture in your mind water seeping slowly on the land, moving slowly. And as it moves, it changes the way the land looks. It changes the landscape. And I see this spiritually moving slowly to us, but moving rapidly with the Creator in bringing about this harmony and balance that we've talked about. We talked about we would not know what it looks like. We talked about we did not want to even foster a guess as to what it would look like because our thoughts have been contaminated as well. And now we are seeing it without knowing what we are seeing until now. So I'm done. Are there any questions or comments about that? I hope I'm clear.
Pastor,
Hello?
this is Evelyn. I like the fact that we didn't have to have, like you said, we had people like Martin and Malcolm, and I'm not even gonna mention Al Sharpton. He ain't got to do with this, but anyway, the leaders, the African leaders. It's the truth, but we didn't have them to say, okay, we're gonna meet this particular time and we're gonna do this line dance. It's like everybody just caught on. You know, and to me, that's the oneness that's being revealed and embraced. It's amazing how this thing happened.
Evelyn,
I'm done.
I saw this week, I was listening at a video, and this African was talking about protecting the leadership in Africa that's making changes. And he said to the West, be careful. The ancestors are involved in this. Be careful how you deal with us. It's different now. The ancestors are involved in this. That spoke volumes to me. But then when I hear I think it was Archie who said that, something in regards to we are not participating in the marches and stuff. Maybe they're picking up on our rhythm. They are. The rhythm of demonstrating came from us trying to bring about change. No one ever demonstrated at the level that we have in the past. And that movement was a pattern for others to take now, with us saying things like, we're going to be behind you, way behind, that kind of thing, or we're going to reach a post, but we're not coming out there. Those things, it seems as though this movement towards balance started a long time ago. And the way it started was by us laying out a pattern for those who did not realize they were just as much abundance as we are to mimic. And in mimicking that pattern, you begin to see what happens. The only person I have seen arrested during one of those demonstrations was 2 black women who were out there with a group of white men. They got arrested. Now, it was more than 2 out there, but only 2 black women got arrested, and all of them were doing the same thing. And that says to me, the ancestors are saying, stay at home. You are guiding this spiritually. You don't have to be physically involved in order to be involved. You are guiding this spiritually. Stay the course. So again, I do believe that this idea of balance is here. We are not on the precipice of it. We are in the midst of it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
George?
Yeah. Any other comments or questions from anyone with regards to what we've been discussing?
I have a quick question or comment to ask. There's an old saying, and I may have it wrong, that old men advise wars, young men fight the wars. In our case, is it more so now the Caucasians are out there fighting the wars, and we as the African, we're advising them from behind as far as we're not physically there with them? Is that the same?
That is the thing. That is the thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's 11:11 or 11:12 now. I just noticed that we're entering an era. We have entered through the gateway, but we are going to begin to see and make the connections more easily with the balance that we have been seeking, with the balance that mankind can benefit from. And I do believe that from this point forward, that's what we're going to experience, more so than anything else. Thank you. Mr. George?
No, I think, great, conversation. I think how we receive this, in the spirit is just being able to appreciate, the word majestic, as in Psalm 8. And I know that verses 1 through 9, there's a lot of content in that. And it's not so much how we teach it, but more importantly, what we teach. And I think that for some reason today, we're talking about the importance of oneness, balance, harmony. And so maybe it's not so much again in terms of marching for anything, but being able to walk with a purpose, to be able to step with a purpose, to be able to, be creative, through the Spirit's leading, that we can appreciate how we continue to spiritually evolve. So I believe that, over the months, and years, we are seeing the manifestation, of our desires in that way that the Creator is giving us the opportunity to do it. So I truly, appreciate the importance of how we move, you know what I mean, through our spiritual journey, our conversations through our spiritual journey. And it kind of made me think a little bit of, about the Dogon tribe, and I mean, it's things that we see with our eyes, but to see it with our eye in terms of how do we move, through the gateway, how do we receive, through the gateway. And I know that a couple of weeks, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, we had talked about the creation story in terms of on the 6th day, everything was created. And on the 7th day, God rested. But after the 7th day, it was the 8th day. And I think we never really got into the eighth day in terms of spiritually, Pastor, what that meant. And so that was one of my questions, is to look at that in a way in terms of a new beginning, where we can appreciate not just us walking in rhythm in terms of the beat, because that's our God-given gifts, to be able to appreciate the heart, soul, and being able to be in rhythm, but to, working at the Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts, I retired, I was listening to music a lot, and it made me think about the offbeat. And one of the things that, I had an interest in trying to work through was doing it on the offbeat. I mean, I know that I know, the correct soul beat, but sometimes I'm trying to think of it in contrast to so above, so below. You know, how do we move in rhythm? And I know that together, when you have, you know, the black and the white keys in harmony, you know what I mean? It creates beautiful music. But more importantly, how do we see it? So my thoughts are just going in ways where it make me appreciate what we're reading when we talk about how majestic is thy name. And so it goes back to the power that we have. So I am the power uh, of who I am. Any questions or comments from anyone with regards to our conversations?
I have one
George,
more
I
thing
think
and I'm done. I yield.
Go ahead. No, I just wanted to, you go ahead. I said after.
Well, I just thought about something when GC said that walking in rhythm. Who made that song? Remember that song? Walking in rhythm.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Y'all remember that song? I thought about that,
I
GC,
do.
when you were talking. Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Here, thank you. I think we should look at that, George. I think a new beginning. But I think we should look at it in relationship to the beginning when we talk about a new beginning. If we were in the midst of a new beginning, how does that relate to the beginning? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think maybe that, at some point, I don't know, maybe the next time we are together, like tomorrow, I don't know, we can look at that, at least begin to look into that new beginning. And when you talk about the offbeat, James Brown music is offbeat. That's what makes it so unique.
All right.
But anyway, I'm done. I
Isn't
am done.
isn't Caribbean music on the offbeat or the upbeat?
The offbeat.
I don't know. Rain?
Just asking.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I was asking, isn't the Caribbean music on the offbeat or the upbeat?
I'm trying to recall it right now. That's like, the person that comes to mind is Bob Marley, as the most well known for Caribbean, unless you like the steel drums. But most African derived music is not square. It's not on 1 and 3. It's usually on 2 and 4, or on some derivative, which is kind of the offbeat. On-beat is like 1, 2, 3, 4. Most African music is 1, 2, 3, 4, or actually it's generally more complex. It's offbeat, but it's also like not necessarily in 4 even. They like to do a lot of 6, 8, or so it has this feeling of dancing more. It's generally not a square sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's usually kind of a dancing feel to it, which is 6, 8, or 1. A waltz is 1, 2, 3, 1, but a 6, 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, and so yeah, it feels more like it moves you more, and it's not necessarily an on and off beat thing as it is which beat. Well, I guess so. Which beat is emphasized, but I can't speak enough to all Caribbean music, but I would say a lot of African, since a lot of it's derived from Africa, is polyrhythmic and can feel like it's on an offbeat. It's not your Western music feeling. Maybe that's what you're feeling when you ask about it. Did you have a song you're thinking about?
No, not one in particular. I was just wondering.
Okay. That's all I know about it, but I'd have to do some research and get back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, we call it house music here in the States. Because a lot of the music that we hear in clubs and stuff is house music, and it originated from the Caribbean. So yeah, that's what we call the house music. I'm done.
Appreciate that, Evelyn. I know that, we kind of spoke in reference to, looking at our creations, our intelligence in terms of music and movement. And, we did not really get into Psalms, the 3 through 9, and that's fine. I don't think we need to, but I think appreciating the moment in terms of us being able to collectively and consciously come together to be in one accord. I truly appreciate, the comments, the questions, the statements. And I believe that it all is for a divine purpose. And what I'm hoping is that we can continue to appreciate the galactic family when we talk about, the stars, the moon, the galaxies, the clusters, the superclusters, because all of it is relevant in reference to so above and so below, because it all lines up. And as it lines up in heaven, it lines up in earth. But I think just moving, in one accord, is something that I'm sensing, that I feel today that I'm grateful for. So I don't have any other comments or questions unless there's anything else anybody else want to add, or Pastor, there's any comments, final comments?
No, I have anything else. That we, at the end, if there are no questions or comments for today, anyway.
Okay, well, since, we all done, and again, I know Lavonna, she's gonna be mad at me, but we're gonna cha-cha a little bit. We gonna, do some movement to exercise, where we can, appreciate the bop or, you know what I mean? Some of those dances, those line dances,
Yeah.
music can make you, I'm just having a good time. I appreciate it all. You guys all have a great afternoon. Thank you for your presence, and we look forward to getting together tomorrow. Unless there's any last minute questions or comments.
Thank you, everyone.
All right,
Thank
family.
you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a good day.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Bye.
Ashe.
Ashe.